album. I have the actual record.
Vinyl?
Vinyl.
Okay.
So
and
you
then,
want to?
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Did it work?
Yeah, it's working.
Okay. So we need to post the link in the groups. So you're grabbing that, right, Tyler?
It's actually in the chat here.
Is it?
I just put it in there.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Aha, that was me duplicating sound. Sorry, guys. Just put it in there.
Oh, there we go. Okay. I just muted mine too. Yeah. I have kids downstairs screaming, "Stop it!" That is nothing.
Are you sure it's not Dan? I mean, like, just saying.
He's not here, so yeah, I think it's.
Oh.
Yeah.
Did Dan ever do the 2-2 deadlift?
No.
He never did it. He never recorded it, huh?
Not yet. He needs to, but he hasn't. Yeah.
We have not forgotten.
I'm sure. Okay. So if Lisa, can you post the link in 2B, Chantel in 1, and I'll do it in 2A?
Yep.
Otherwise, we're just going to keep talking to ourselves and no one's going to show up.
I'm good either way.
We could just have a meeting.
I need another meeting. Like, I need a second hole in my rear end.
We are recording.
And that's.
All right. Oh, darn it. I'm in 2B here.
We're in week 2, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Do I just put it in the events?
I'm just making it a post, and then I'll also put it in the event, I think. Yeah.
Do I hear a dog? Is it what that is?
Yeah. Go lay
It's like
down.
click, 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 click. And then I hear slobber breathing.
He acts like he's dying when I cut his nails, so his nails are longer than they should be, and so he sounds like he's tap dancing everywhere he goes.
You can give it enough Benadryl and knock the little turd right on his back, and then you can do it easily.
True. I have a little thing that I built, sewed. It's like a straight jacket for him.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
And then I hang him from the pull-up bar in the closet doorway and just trim his nails, and
You have a pug tote.
I do. I have a pug tote. Okay, now I need to minimize these windows.
That sounds like tugboat, except backwards.
Pug tote. All right, let's see. I'm not used to doing this on my computer, so I have to be able to see the questions in YouTube while. All right, I don't know if there's anybody joining us yet. Yes, who's asking about Denise? Yes, a dog's straight jacket. She must have come in at a strange part of the conversation. All right.
That's right.
I have a pug who hates having his toenails cut, and so they're longer than they need to be. So I made this dog straight jacket so that I could hang him in the doorway from a pull-up bar and trim his nails without him freaking out. Seems to work okay. All righty. I don't think anybody else is on really, right? 11, 9. All right, guys, ask some questions. But first, we're going to start by sort of talking about eating out, going out, hanging out with friends, going to parties, going to whatever, and how you deal with keto while there. And since it's Lisa's topic, Lisa can start.
So a little backstory when y'all know I was overweight and whatnot, but when we moved to Texas, we never had such a social life and didn't know how to really navigate this great community we live in, and there is a food fest or a party or a barbecue for anything in the world where I live.
Because
And
it's Texas.
because it's barbecue. And so I put on even more weight than I did when we moved here. And that probably was the hardest thing for me to learn how to navigate.
Sorry.
How to disconnect the food from the event and how to really make the event the focus and not the fact that my famous thing is Super Bowl. We don't do football, but Super Bowl and football down here are huge. That every Super Bowl party has nothing to do with football whatsoever. It has to do with the chicken wings and the queso and the fajitas and all these foods that are everybody brings, and the beer and all this stuff. And then even the holidays down here are more so than in the Northeast about food. And I've got to say, probably only the last 2 years is when I really was able to go to these events with friends and family, and it's not about the food anymore. And it's how I prepare before, what I plan when I'm going to be there, and what I'm going to do after. And it takes time to learn that. Next.
All right. Chantel, what's your plan?
What's my plan? Well, I usually not that social, so it's pretty easy for me because if I host, it's at home, and I just prepare the foods that I can eat, and my family is usually around, so they'll eat what they're going to eat. But I usually make a pot of chili for Super Bowl, and I just make it keto friendly, so there's no beans or anything in it, and it's pretty easy for me because I'm not that social. But when I go out to social events, I just eat before I go, and then sip on diet soda or whatever's there.
Yeah, that's the same. I don't really go many places. I kind of just stay home and live on my computer. But if I do go out, sometimes I'll eat before. Sometimes if I know what they're going to have there, then I'll just kind of plan accordingly. But if I go and they don't have anything for me to eat, I'm keto and I know I'm not going to die, in the 3 hours that I'm there. So I just don't eat. I just have something to drink and then eat when I get home. I think people get kind of caught up in there's this event and everybody's eating and I have to eat, I'm hungry, but you can kind of just tough through it if you set your mind that you're not going to eat the wrong foods. You just kind of decide it ahead of time and stick to your guns. I know it's easier said than done, but that's been my plan so far.
My favorite way of planning ahead is if then otherwise. If this happens, then I'm going to do this. Otherwise, I'm going to do that. And I have that set in my head so that there is a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. And otherwise is always time to go home. So.
Well, I think the big thing is having things recited in your head about what you're going to say if people ask you questions about why you're not eating. And I don't really feel like I need to explain myself to people. I just say, oh, I ate before I came, or no, thank you. I'm not, for whatever reason, but you don't get a lot of flack, but if people start asking you a lot of questions and you get really uncomfortable with it, it helps if you have things recited in your head, how you're going to respond to that before you even get there. Which is why it helped me to eat before I went, because then I could just say I already ate and I'm not hungry, but thank you.
Tyler.
I don't like any of you people, and the food is terrible and acceptable answer here. No, I'm teasing.
Depends on the circumstance.
Depends if you like these people.
I'm sorry I'm late. I didn't want to come. So it's kind of a funny thing because I do enjoy going out and being social, but the challenge is for a guy with social anxiety, if it becomes too stimulating, the solution is food or booze. And those are not super beneficial solutions because the booze for years led to food. And when I ditched the booze, it was just more food. So I really had to sort of develop a few strategies. The first is I sort of pre-scout what's going to be on the menu or where we're going. And you can do that a couple of ways. If you're doing it at somebody's house, Chantel, I think you hit the nail on the head saying, hey, I just bring something sometimes that's that I know works for me and my macros and my plans. But I'll even go so far sometimes as to like say, hey, would love to contribute something. What do you guys already have on the menu and what can I do? You know why I do it? Because you know every Southerner is going to go, oh no, we've got it covered, but let me tell you what we're cooking. And they'll tell you, hey, we're doing, you know, red beans and rice, and we're doing jambalaya, or we're doing steaks, or we're doing, you know, and you just know in your head, like, okay, hey, I know those guys are going to do strip steaks or ribeyes, not sirloin. So I need to go super lean on whatever I eat in the morning just to be able to accommodate that in the evening. And even if they say no, 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 bring in a little something is usually okay. Don't like roll in there with like, I brought this standing rib roast because your food sucks. But like, you know, being able to show up with a small pot of something that works for you and just saying, look, I just couldn't in my mind rationalize coming over and not contributing something. So you're welcome to go throw this out in the sink if you want to, but I'm Southern, forgive me, right? And usually people are just totally cool with, I will just throw it on the table, and now you've got your side to go with whatever the main dish is. I do think that there are times when there's just nothing there and you just need to kind of sit there and enjoy the company. One of the interesting things I learned as I went through a lot of this was I wasn't really craving the food in those scenarios as much as I was craving like the social engagement. I needed this stimulatory sort of conversation and kicking back and forth of ideas. And the food was a proxy for that. The dinner was a proxy for that. It was a proxy for relationship. And, you know, in a lot of different aspects, getting to relationship without food was a really tough thing because we have habits. You know, we know, yeah, I can tell you right now that my locker combination my senior year of high school was 37-7-37. Why do I know that? Because we have habit patterns. My first phone number was 270-365-7472. Why do I know those things? Well, actually, it was 502, and then we changed area codes. But how do I know that from when I was 4? Because you develop patterns and you remember those things in sequence. And it's the same sort of thing. If you're going to the same restaurants, if you're going to the same dinners, if you're around the same people, look, you're going to do the same behaviors. You have to find a way to find some chain or some link in that chain to break that off. And it may be eating beforehand so that you have a pre-built excuse. It may be developing a phantom allergy to whatever the crap they're serving so that you can profusely apologize and say, hey, I know I'm weird and I'm sorry. It can outright be, look, I love you guys. I mean, it depends on the relationship. Or like if these people are people you're never around, have a better excuse than love you, but I'm not eating your food. But if it's like grandma and you're there every Sunday, you are going to eventually run out of excuses, and you just would be better to have an open conversation with her or with your uncle or whoever, and to say, look, I'm really trying to reclaim my health. And one of the things that is really difficult is for me to stop eating, your jambalaya because it's delicious, or to stop eating your mashed potatoes because anything made with 4 quarts of heavy cream is absolutely delicious. Like, you just have to have those open conversations. So it really just depends on who I'm with, how frequently I'm with them, where I'm going, how much I can plan ahead, and then quite frankly, how willing I am to lie to that person. Little white lie, I guess, but that's a long answer, but there you go.
So this sort of rolls into what Bear's asking. He wants to talk about dealing with food addiction.
Okay. Can I split a hair here really quickly and then I'll shut up? If we're talking about legitimate food addiction, like I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, sitting in front of my refrigerator, rocking back and forth, and I can't stop putting food in my mouth, that's kind of one thing. If we're talking about a compulsion to eat, usually the food is not the addiction, the anxiety is the problem. And the food is a manifestation of the anxiety disorder. So I do want to split those hairs a little bit, because there are absolutely true food addictions and there are true anxiety disorders that mask themselves as food addictions or disordered eating. So I would just say we probably need to address both of those things rather than just one or the other.
All right. Lori says she's getting close to 100 pounds lost and would like to celebrate with her family when it comes, but does not want to center it around food.
Perfect.
Anybody have any suggestions? A party, right?
Go to Top Golf and
Balloons.
do something active.
Yeah, go on a hike.
Whatever
Yeah,
you
there we go.
whatever you do not go ride a mechanical bull. Most of you don't remember this story. We had a client who had made their way to level 3 and on her 40th birthday went out for friends, had this whole thing planned, ate really well, spared some macros for booze, got a little bit tipsy, got in a mechanical bull, fell off and spiral fractured like 2 of the fingers in her hand, and wound up having to have multiple surgeries. So whatever you end up doing, do not ride a mechanical bull while drunk. That's my one caveat. But yeah, just don't do food. Do it at a weird time too. Like if you're gonna have a party, do it at like 3 in the afternoon or like 9:30. Because then if you're not super social, people are gonna leave at 11:30 and you've only had to deal with them for 2 hours. And free gifts, right? But like, secondly, if you do it later, you're not having to feed those people either. And so they're gonna come having already eaten. And so it's sort of like when you try and go cheap on a kid's birthday and you do it at like 2:30 in the afternoon. Like we've all been there. I totally understand, but like that's a thing. So do that. Go to places where people are going to basically buy their own food. So Top Golf, arcade, depending on what you're into, like little arcade and go-kart type tracks if you're into that. If you're into something a little more laid back and chill, you could even do something like charcuterie, wine tasting, whatever, someplace listening to an orchestra. I don't know where you're at, but like there are options that maybe tangentially related to food, but the food is not the main item that happens there. But if you're going to like the traditional Mexican place where they're going to come out singing Celito Lindo, or they're going to come out there and sing some fancy song and then smash a cake in your face, and let's be honest, that's about the food. That's not about the celebration, right? If you're going to the Western Sizzler, that's about the food because you're basically going to pull up a chair at the mashed potatoes and dare somebody to drag you away. So go someplace where people are on their own to get food. Go at a time when they've probably either already eaten or don't want to eat again before bed. And quite frankly, if you're going to do drinking, just make sure you're super lean on your macros leading up and make sure that you are mentally prepared and have somebody there as accountability to step in and keep you from ordering the cheese sticks or whatever else usually follows the booze.
I would say go do something active. Go bowling. Go miniature golfing.
Yeah.
Lawn
darts.
Because like nobody wants to eat when you go bowling because your hands are so disgusting, even though they offer food. Like, no.
All right. We have no questions, so.
So I'm scrolling back through. Jen said she got her raspberry flavored Element and she is very happy with it. And guess what?
Are you drinking it?
That's what I'm drinking right now. So I had coffee earlier and I couldn't justify an additional 30 ounces of coffee. So fun stuff.
Sleep again.
Yeah, so much.
Sleep is overrated.
Have you ever tracked how much caffeine you get in a day?
Me?
Yeah.
There are days when I get to about 1.2 grams. And yes, I have tracked it pretty closely. Those are days usually when I'm traveling and like I'll go through. It's funny, about the time that you get to like St. Louis or anywhere west of Dallas, all the Monster energy drinks in the airports turn into rock stars. And the rock stars have like twice as much caffeine per can as the Monsters. So I'll literally just pick up 2 of them as I'm going. So I've already had morning coffee. I'll probably have an evening coffee when I get to a hotel or an airport where I'm like the destination airport, depending on the time of day. And I'm usually half a gram of Rockstar in if I'm going west, or like, 300 milligrams if I'm coming back east into Monster country. But apparently Luis purchased some coffee in New York that is something like a gram of caffeine per 16 ounces or something insane. So
I would just die.
Yeah.
Like too much caffeine for me, and I feel like it's my responsibility to make sure my heart keeps beating, and then I start panicking. I'm just like, am I doing it? I don't know. It's too
You know, that's funny because yesterday I've been having a sinus thing. Yesterday before the gym, I took 2 Sudafed and then took my pre-workout.
Whoa.
Yeah, didn't do that again.
Are you seeing flavors? Like,
I was like, I got to the gym and I'm like, if I pass out, just like let them know I had Sudafed and caffeine.
oh my gosh. Denise asks, is it okay to put Soleil in the PWO? Yeah, I do. Yeah. Putting salt in your pre-workout is a good idea.
okay.
So that was an easy one there. Yeah, no questions. Romeo. Okay. I don't know if, yes. I find if I do eat ahead of a party or event, but I am out late, I get hungry as it gets late. Normally I go to bed early, so it's easy to prevent late night eating. How do you handle that?
2 ways I handle it. One is I just excuse myself and say, listen, I'm just not feeling really well right now. So sorry, love you guys, but I'm going to head back. The other, and this is a weird one, is to sneak like beef sticks or something that are very high protein, very low calorie with you, beef jerky if you've got it, but that usually leaves like speckles in your teeth. So that creates its own issue. But yeah, so those are really strategies that I found work well. And apart from that, yeah, when you stay up well past your bedtime, your body is like, all right, time for fourth meal. Like the Taco Bell thing is actually a thing at that point. So
don't stay up early or have a strong willpower, right? Backup plans. You can always bring like a tuna pouch, although that's going to be obvious that you're eating tuna because it's got a very distinct smell. But you know, if you are afraid that you're going to have something that you can eat that you know will keep you on track.
mhm.
All right. Joni says, coaches, can you speak to what habits you formed to overcome your eating vices? Did you do it all at once or in stages? What keeps you on track, and or what do you do to get back on track?
Well, I can speak for myself, and I've noticed it lately because I've sort of been changing when I eat, but I try and eat at the same time every day. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner are always within an hour and a half to 2 hours daily, and I've been kind of changing that. And so what happens to me when I don't follow my schedule, I get hungrier, and then I start thinking about things that I shouldn't be eating, or I'll grab a handful of nuts, which I shouldn't be doing. So I just commit to eating at the same time, and then I don't get really hungry in between, and I know when my next meal is going to be.
All right. For me, I was typing something. For me, I just, if it's in between meals, Tyler likes to type stuff behind the scenes that makes us laugh because he thinks it's funny.
Chantel, you said something that taken out of context is wildly inappropriate. And I am an inner 16-year-old, so you've got to leave me alone.
Okay.
It's going to happen every time, every single time. What do I do? Just listen. I'll drink more Soleil. Like if I get in between meals and I feel like I want to eat something, but I know that it's not time for me to eat, I'll make sure electrolytes are where they should be. And even if they are, I'll have a little extra because that usually does the trick. If it's later at night and, you know, it's a normal time when people want something after dinner, I'll have some tea or some decaf coffee or just, you know, whatever, something to sip on that's not going to affect my progress in any way. Sorry, I have to let a dog in. Hold on.
And I, after my last meal, I put my retainers in. They're in right now. So, and I will do that during the day too. If by chance, you know, if I'm for some reason in a snacky mood, I'll just go brush my teeth and put my retainers in. And if you don't have retainers, put some whitening trays in. And
Put somebody else's retainers in if you don't own any.
Do on a stick.
There you go. Yeah, for me, it's like I can't say that I did it in stages necessarily, but I think that it became more intuitive and more simple over time because it just became a pattern that replaced another pattern or a habit that replaced another habit. Um, the biggest struggles for me have always been when I'm away from my home and away from my routine. So like if I'm used to, and Chantel, you mentioned this too, like, I eat at this time, I don't eat at this time, I eat at this time, I go to work, I do my thing. Like when you're not at home and you're out on the go and like there's no rhyme nor reason to when you're getting up and when you're going to bed and where you're, whatever, like that's ultimately just a challenge. And it was for me, like when I would go to airports for travel, it would be like, I don't know if you guys know this, but airport calories don't count. Like the body does not process Cinnabon from the airport at all. So so you could eat all of them that you want, no problem. That's a complete lie, by the way. But the reality is like you those are the problems that I had. And so I had to develop strategies for dealing with that. For one thing, I actually had a couple of friends and my brother who at times when I was still struggling with that, I would put them on a headset and talk to them the entire time that I was at the airport. So I would try and get there like 45 minutes or an hour. So I could get in like 45 minutes or an hour before the flight. And I'd have 20, 30 minutes to get a drink or whatever. But he'd be listening or she'd be listening on my headset, and like they'd straight up call me out if they heard me ordering a Cinnabon or getting some kind of frou-frou drink at Starbucks that's like sugar laden, sugar smacks and whatever in there. And so I just had to figure out compensatory mechanisms, again, like ways to break the cycle between the cue, which for me was like travel or being on the road or out of my routine, and then the habit pattern that led to the outcome. I actually, in order to have a different outcome, had to change something. And I just figured if you're going to change something, change it as close to the source as possible. So yeah, I would just have rather found ways to cut it off at the head. So the other things would be like taking, and I've seen this be successful. If you're somebody that's like an after work binger, somebody that Chris, take a different drive home that doesn't go past the restaurants, or make sure that you call somebody or put on like your coming home playlist that's full of hype music or whatever to like get you in the mood to like fight and win and succeed. Not like if you're listening to like Chopin's Nocturne in E flat minor on the way home, chances are you're going to be hearing it, like you're going to be inserting words to like the Hardee's or the Wendy's menu, like to the sound of the piano playing. Like it's just low key music makes us feel somber, which makes us want to eat. Kind of higher tempo music, the stuff with lyrics that are encouraging or pushing you forward, or the things that are going to make you go, no, I'm white knuckling it right past this Shoney's or whatever. So that's the second terrible buffet reference I've made today. That's sad.
What was
Sorry,
it?
guys. Well, I mentioned Western Sizzlin earlier, and now I mentioned Shoney's, and
I don't know either of them.
I'm trying to think of a good. You guys have Bonanzas in California, don't you? The buffets. I know you do in Texas because you have everything buffet.
We have Golden Corral.
Yes, Golden Corral. Yeah, okay. Well, Golden Corral, Bonanza, Western Sizzlin, they're all ubiquitous. So like you go there, it is actually the land where Ebola is born, I think. Like you basically get salmonella on your receipt when you pay up front. Like it's just a thing. So by the way, somebody on here is going to be like, I manage a Western Sizzlin, and that is not true. And that's okay.
Maybe not all. Just throw asterisks out there.
Info at ketogains.com.
Yeah, direct all of your complaints there.
Nice.
Those will go directly to Amy.
Yeah, thanks, Chantal. Thank you.
So Carol, by the way, said, "Hey Lisa, so no cardio, so no caffeine and Sudafed together." No, there was a stack that was really, really popular a while back, and I am in no way advocating this. But it was yohimbine and caffeine and I want to say aspirin. I can't remember what it was, but yohimbine, if you get the good stuff, you know that scene in Tommy Boy where he's outside and they're hosing him off and he starts singing, "I'm a maniac, maniac," and like he's dancing spastically. You can't stop moving on this stuff. I made the mistake of buying some and trying it one time. And I went from that for 3 hours to wanting to lay on the floor and cry. And I was like, I have no idea what just happened, but I've experienced all three emotions that a human male is capable of experiencing in 4 hours. So,
Like menopause.
yeah, there you go.
Man,
I both hate you and love you at the same time.
Hours. It's like 15
Can I-
minutes.
And I stab you while we're snuggling. Who was it? Somebody in one of the chats. It was Rochelle actually said something to the effect of she's not allowed to have a knife in her possession and that someday I would understand or something. I was like, it's okay. Romeo said, I can put some jerky in my purse. By the way, if you're going any place with security dogs, jerky in your purse is 100% going to get your bag inspected because that dog's going to queue on that thing. Just fair warning, it happens.
Just make sure that's all you have in there.
Yeah, so if you're going to like TSA, make sure that you don't have the jerky in like a Ziploc bag because those don't hold smells in very well. And the dogs get a little excited and then they shove the dog's beak right up your legs to try and find out if you're smuggling drugs. So, all right, Denise said, what are some exercises to do on Wednesday as HIIT? I always feel like I'm a little lost because I'm not sure what to do. What is a good interval? Well, a good interval is going to depend on where your cardio base is and where your strength base is. So for me, for example, I'll typically try and so if I do like jujitsu as a HIIT day, I'll work it out with whoever I'm rolling with that day. And we will, maybe for 3 to 5 minutes, just go, excuse the expression, balls out, just go and hardcore. And then for like the next 2 minutes, we'll just flow roll. So it's super laid back and like, if I get to a position where I have control, I'll let the person tap and we just reset and we pick it back up and it's super slow and controlled. And then after 2 minutes, jump back up the intensity and go crazy. So.
All right.
Yes, I realize I said balls out and hardcore in the same sentence. So for those of you that want to laugh, feel free to laugh. Chantal, yours was still way, way more classless, I'm just going to say.
Yeah, we skipped Dennis's question about diet drinks and bourbon. When socializing and wanting something besides water, which is the better of the two evils?
On your goals.
Was he asking which was better or worse, bourbon or diet drinks?
Diet drinks versus bourbon if you're out socializing, which
Both,
is better to have?
Both together on the rocks. Like, here's the thing. The diet drink, and I'm going to be really, really transparent here. One of the reasons that we basically said super, super limited on artificial sweeteners is this reason. When we first started this 4 years ago, we kind of had a very open policy with respect to things like Diet Coke or, something along those lines, until we realized that like there were people who were taking that freedom as a personal challenge to see, like, I think because they were being restricted from dairy and nuts, they felt like this was their one indulgence and they were going to make the most of it. And so they were going through like a case of Diet Coke every 2 days. And so we basically just said, okay, bad apple, whole bunch, done. We're kind of out on that. And part of that was also because people were using things like prebiotic fibers, like Quest bars, and arguing, but it's fiber and it's sweet, but it doesn't have calories, and it does, and they're wrong, and whatever. But like, it just got to a point where it was easier to make that statement. If you're somebody who wants to have a mixed drink, have a mixed drink. I would not necessarily say, let me rephrase that. It's in no way optimal to have a drink. But if the difference between you having between you having a drink and being 95% on point with everything else versus you feeling completely deprived from having that drink and it causing you to like decide you're going to show us by eating a whole plate of nachos with barbecue on them. Like, I'd rather you have the bourbon and diet. Like, that's just common sense. The challenge for a lot of folks, especially smaller framed women who are on fat loss macros, is if you start deducting those calories from fat and there's not a whole lot of fat in the macros to begin with, you end up at like 25, 30 grams of fat in a day. And you're going, how do I eat 140 grams of protein and only get 20 or 30 grams of fat in? Because that's like canned tuna fish city. And that's about it. You're going to live like a cat. So I'm not really opposed to either one within the right context and within the right frame of mind.
Yeah, one thing I would, if drinking the alcohol makes you want to eat more, then take that into account. But if it doesn't and it's not going to make you blow through your macros, then, you know, have a drink. But I know a lot of people kind of lose their willpower when it comes to alcohol. So just be mindful of that.
I typically have a food maven around me when I drink heavily at all. So that, because it's super easy to go like, bring me 65 chicken wings. And the reality is I have somebody who's looking around the corner going, don't bring him 65 chicken wings. He'll forget in 5 minutes. You know, so like that's usually a good strategy, is if you're going to do that, just have somebody there who can step in and be like, I know you think you want this, but tomorrow you're just going to cry. So I'm not going to let you have that. And you can hate me for the next 12 hours until you thank me tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
And it needs to be somebody that both you won't punch in the face and who won't mind if you get really belligerent with them once in a while, because you will.
Yeah, don't sign me up to be that person. I don't.
I've never asked any of our coaching
No, I know.
team to like watch me while I have 4 drinks. But then again, I've only probably done that in a while.
Looks like Carol's husband is that guy.
So we were at a party. I was reaching.
No, you don't want to eat that cupcake.
So here's the thing, and this is where it's important to make a distinction or a point here. If you've asked somebody to be that for you, you probably need to explain when somebody has to step in for you what that was, because everybody that hears that person saying that is going to think, what a controlling prick. And they're going to hate that person's guts. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, if you've got an accountability buddy, and like they're stepping in and being like that. I don't know if you guys like watch college football. Do you remember the commercial with Nick Saban where he's like, young lady, you know you don't want that dress. You're going to wear it, what, 2-3 times, and then it'll be all out of season. It's a cringeworthy commercial, but there you go. You need somebody like that, but you also need other people around you to know that you actually have asked that person to do that he's not, or she's not like, no, you're going to get fat. Like, that's just not an acceptable way to be. So Carol said, writes the name down for reference. Okay.
Jen says, what do y'all do when you're sick? My kids brought home the crud and all 3 of us are suffering. Normally I do honey tea and whiskey and rest.
Okay.
Egg drop soup.
Warm, salty drinks. So broth laden stuff. I'll actually do a lot of coffee with, because I know a guy who gets it for cheap. I use Element, but you can use whatever light salt you've got around will work as well. The reality is the whiskey doesn't do anything to help except maybe numb the back of your throat a little bit. If that's an issue, find a friend that's a doctor and get some lidocaine liquid to gargle. I mean, like, you're probably going to bite your tongue, but like, if it's really that bad, first of all, go see a doctor. But if you're not going to go see a doctor, don't use liquor to fix a problem. Like, if you want to crash, just take some Benadryl or something and go to sleep. And that would be my 2 cents. But Also, make your kids wear those like Asian tourist masks when they come home. That's a good starter step. Or make them live outside like feral animals. That works too.
That does work. Okay, Bear asked, if anxiety is the problem, what are some ways to deal with it? And this was a follow-up on his question about food addiction.
What was the question? I'm sorry, I was
Sorry.
reading one of these. Oh,
Yeah, he said if anxiety is the problem. Yeah.
Okay. There is a great video, and I need to find it, and I will drop it in the chat. So give me just a minute and I will share it. It's actually a Navy SEAL who came back and has dealt with all sorts of anxiety issues, having come back from deployments and PTSD. And he's got some really, really cool strategies there. One of which is like, I never go any place when I travel that I don't have a car that the keys are in my pocket to. And he's like, when I travel, I have somebody that I trust with me, like my wife or somebody else, and we have a code word for when I'm feeling completely overwhelmed. And they have permission to come alongside and actually intervene and step in if they need to. And he even goes so far as say, like, I don't make small talk. Like, I go to these events and I'm there to do a thing or be a thing or whatever, and I'll listen and smile. And guess what? I don't feel in any way in a group of 10 people obligated to have my voice heard. So I don't let myself get anxious about that. For me, it's a little different, and maybe I'm inserting, my thoughts into your life or something. I don't know, but like large groups of people, I try and manage visually and mentally where everybody is as far as where they're moving around me. And I've told people before, you get to judge me when somebody's hit you in the face with a pool stick in a bar fight. Because that's when I first noticed that I kind of like to know where everybody in the room was. And by the way, for those of you who know, I was not always a really good guy. And so when I can't control the situation, I have to turn my brain off. And the only ways I found to do that are booze and food. So realistically, one of the strategies I use is actually when I go to functions where I know I'm going to be high anxiety, and all of y'all have seen me, 3 of you anyway, about the time that it's time for me to get backed into a corner and talk to for 4 hours, there will be some sort of a drink in my hand. And is it a great coping mechanism? No. But if a drink or 2 drinks keeps me from eating 5,000 calories worth of Doritos, like, that's a trade-off that I have to make. And I have to make sure my hydration's on point with electrolytes. I have to make sure that I'm in the gym and moving to stay active. But there's no harm in just fleeing the scene, right? I mean, if it's possible to do, just get in the car, make up some excuse and escape. Also having the ability to find like a calm down space, right? So when you go in there, maybe it's the back corner of the bar where you can pretend you're on the phone for a few minutes, or maybe you excuse yourself to the restroom and you actually step outside and do some deep breathing meditation or something where you just have some momentary regaining of control before you re-enter a situation where you're actually going to feel anxious. And I'm going to mute myself while I go look for this video real quick because it was actually good. Hey, Pop.
Oh, it's a cute dog. All right.
Not holding.
So Dominique asks, speaking on the sugar-free stuff, what about things such as Crystal Light and or sugar-free Jello? When I make my electrolyte drink, I'll use those little Crystal Light single serve packets. And that's just part of my electrolyte plan. That's just what I do. I use those. So I have 2 of those a day because I do 2 drinks for my electrolytes a day. Sugar-free Jello for me, I don't have, because that's more of like a snack type thing. And, it would kind of replace desserts or something snacky that I'm avoiding anyway. So for me, Crystal Light's a yes, but sugar-free Jello, I don't really touch for that reason. I'm not sure what you guys do.
I use the little Mio squeezers, which is the same. It's just, artificial sweetener.
Yeah.
And That's really the only thing. I do have sugar-free Jellos in the fridge, but they're probably old as dirt. I don't think I'd want to eat them at this point. But they're always just kind of there. But yeah.
I always ask myself what my motivation is for having the thing. If it's I want to drink with some flavor, then it's fine. Like I'll do a Diet Coke or Coke Zero or some Element or something like that. But if it's, oh, I'm really craving real thing and I'm going to do fake thing in replacement of real thing, it's a real slippery slope because fake thing is never going to taste as good as real thing. And it's going to leave you both craving the original version of that flavor and also realizing that this ain't it. And I have more than once seen somebody go, oh, well, I sat down and I ate like half a Quest pizza. And then 2 hours later, I was like, I didn't like that, but I really want pizza. And then it just buried into my head. And after 4 hours, I finally capitulated and called Papa John's and ordered like a large all meat. And it's not an individual case thing. It's like, oh, I ate 2 Quest bars. Well, that stinks. Yeah, but then I realized they weren't very good. And so went into my kids' Halloween bucket and ate like 37, fun size Snickers or whatever. And it's like, it's always fake thing, dissatisfaction, craving, real thing. It's this cascade or this loop that happens all the time. So I don't let myself go there. But if it's just, hey, I want something that tastes fruity or I want something that has some acidity to it or whatever, that's actually it. So.
All right.
Dennis asked about Powerade Zero. Yeah. Powerade Zero is fine I would really target it for around training. Just because it does have a little bit of carb, but it's mostly citric acid. But what I would also say is there's almost no electrolytes in it. So if you're going to use that, you're thinking it's replacing electrolytes, you need to basically chuck in like 3 grams of light salt in there. If you're talking about like the big 32 ounce, like the 1 liters or whatever, those would be, or 33.8 or whatever, like the 1 liters, I would definitely encourage you to up the electrolytes on that for sure. Whoa, what was that?
Was that me dinging? Sorry.
Yeah, was that what that was? I thought it was a microphone squelch, but okay.
Yeah, no, I had a text come across.
Carol said Snickers are banned in my house. For me, that is peanuts or peanut M&Ms or peanut butter M&Ms. If they come in the door, they get thrown not even in the trash because I will go get them. They go into the garbage disposal and they get churned up. And my whole like kitchen area smells like chocolate and crispy wafer.
So
and
does that really help then?
Here's the thing. Guess what? I'm gonna have to drive the 4.5 miles to the store to get them, and I'm entirely too lazy to do that. So there you go.
Oh, that's funny. That stuff doesn't bother me anymore for some reason, which is good. It helps. Karen says True Lime packets are awesome in Soleil. 2 packets equals 1 gram of carbs, not sweetened. I've never tried those before.
Amy, your dog would be the most amazing tap dancer in history.
The 2 feet, he's got 4.
Mm-hmm.
He's so loud.
Right.
All right. I don't see. Oh.
M&M upside down or Weight Watchers pills. Nice. Yeah. Dennis said M&M's upside down or Weight Watchers pills. It's funny. Reminds me of a really mean joke, but anywho, they could be Sigma, I guess, if you turn them on their side, but I don't know. They really don't have this stiff M. So anyway.
They're actually just M&Ms.
By the way, for those of you that haven't been on one of these with me, I'm a giant dork, and so are the rest of us here. So basically, we're all just a bunch of weirdos, and you're getting to see our personality here a little bit. So hopefully that's fun. But Melissa will be back to rein in this rodeo poo show next week. So you won't have to deal with us being crazy.
Last time they come to see our lives now.
I'm literally like 24 watching, 20 watching, 15 watching, 12 watching. No,
0.
Flatline.
Like even the coaches have stopped watching it.
I think that's. Oh wait,
Yeah, we got a few more minutes, so if you guys have questions,
Yeah.
cue away, because Lisa would like to show her A.
Dennis appreciates
Wait,
us.
that didn't come out right. Sorry.
Wait a minute.
I missed it. Maybe that's okay.
Yeah. we
Oh
won't-
no, it was a good old show your A kind of.
We are weirdos. Okay, they all like us, so we're good.
Well, that's good.
Well, only the people that showed up like it, so we got to worry.
Joni, Dennis,
what?
and Jen,
We don't have a huge following, so
and Lori. Hey, they all good. We're good.
well, but the word might get out, right?
Well, now that Tyler's promised me showing my A, everybody's going to show
It's
up
like-
next time.
Look,
It's like
it's me.
67, 114,
Wow,
227.
Sarah
Oh
wants
my
to shoot you a PM, Tyler. Is that okay? How about
Yeah, sure, that's fine. That's fine.
any more questions, guys?
Well, Lisa, I guess it's your turn to show your A's.
Wait. I didn't say A's plural.
Oh,
I only
That's
have
a very
one A. I
different
have
thing.
two T's,
oh, that's one A.
but only one A.
Oh my lord. There we go. So she said, "What is the biggest piece of knowledge you always hope to impart to campers?"
Eat your macros.
Just follow and plan. That's mine. Plan.
Don't be
Don't wing
perfect.
it.
Don't try to be perfect because you're gonna fail. Do your best,
Um,
and then when you learn something new, do that.
I really want to like fire off with like the Hulk Hogan, eat your vitamins and say your prayers, kids. But like, I think that the reality is this. There's really two things, and Amy, you hit the nail on the first one, which is y'all, if you have kids in the room putting you on, fuck perfection. I'm sorry, but it is the worst possible best friend that you can have. It is the thing that sits on your shoulder like the devil's own Jiminy Cricket, telling you that, it loves to play both sides against the middle. It'll say, oh, well, you're too old to make any change. And then if you start to make change, it'll say, sure, but if you had only done this when you were younger, imagine what your life could have been. It loves to basically try and the reality is perfectionism is not beneficial to you. Perfectionism is at its core an ego protective strategy that fearful us uses to try and pull us back to the place where we know it's safe and comfortable, which is eating your cupcakes and your pizzas and sitting on the couch and basically wasting your life away. The human mind craves sameness and repetition, and everything about what we're doing here is about changing your status quo. And you just have to accept that you will have to reject perfection because you're going to screw it up. Like every day I could sit here and recount to you like this laundry list. I don't know if you guys remember, is it the Jim Carrey version of the Grinch where he like folds the paper and it like rolls all the way out the door and down the mountain or whatever. Like that's my list of failures. But your progress is going to be made, and this is kind of my second thing, based on what you do when it sucks. Because the days when it's easy, everybody gets those. You do it right on the days that it's easy because like the stars align and like macros fall from the sky and there's like an angel, like a little fat cherub that delivers them to your plate, and everything works in your favor. We all get a handful of those a year. But it's the other 200 days where it's basically phoning in B work or C work and letting that be good enough versus D and F work that are really ideal. Understand that everything about what we do here is about driving you to the point to which you go, I can't be perfect. And then we get to stand up and go, yes, now what are you going to do the day after perfect? That's it. If nothing else we ever impart or teach you in the next 8 weeks or however long you stay with us, if you go away with that, you will have success in your life, or more success in your life than you were having.
Yeah, and try to break up with the shame spiral that you tend to get stuck in. you can't really change if you're constantly beating yourself up about being human. So if you make a mistake, just, all right, apparently I was supposed to learn something there.
Mhm.
And then just, you know, pick up your boots and move on. Just do what you know you're supposed to do. People get stuck in this whole thing where they're just feeling like they're a massive failure, and they think that they have to punish themselves over whatever it was that they did wrong, and then they don't make any progress. So drop the shame, drop the beating yourself up that everybody does, and just do better next time. I mean, that's,
time and time again, the people that strive for perfection to the point where it's almost an obsession crash hard. Like if you're not trying to be perfect, when you stumble, you get back up and keep going. But the people that are like, I need to be perfect, this is not there, it's going to be ugly.
yeah, you just accept the missteps as a learning, as a lesson that you have to learn during your journey. If you accept it as part of the journey rather than fight it and say, I failed, I'm terrible, I'm the worst, I'm just horrible, then you're actually going to make some progress. Let's see. Lori asks, hey, earlier in the Facebook group, glove wearing while lifting, should I quit wearing them because I really like them?
Yes.
Quit wearing them.
Quit wearing them. Put them away.
It sucks because you're gonna get calluses on your hands a little bit, and your palms will thicken a little bit. And people go, "What about man hands?" Guess what? If you hold the bar right, it'll be very, very minimal. And there's some great videos on YouTube about proper grip on a barbell or dumbbell, and that'll be hugely helpful. But here is why I don't want you wearing gloves. It's the same reason that I don't want you using a pad when you do squats. If you're somebody who engages in like barbell squats, anything that you do which creates any gap, any distance, or any shearing movement from your skin connecting to the thing that you're trying to manipulate or move is going to weaken your position and put you at greater risk for injury. People think, what about my hands? And all I can think is, what about a torn pectoral muscle or a detached biceps? When people say, oh, I like the pad on my shoulders because this hurts my traps, all I can think about is what happens when it falls down and snaps C3 and C4. Like, I know that that's being super, super macabre, and I'm sorry. Actually, I'm not sorry, because it's something that people need to hear. There is a reason that goes way beyond, look how tough I am, that people that know fitness don't use gloves and don't use, there's a derogatory term for the bar that you use in a squat, but don't use that particular type of pad. There's a reason that they want connection between their skin or their muscle and the actual bar or the weight that they're using. And it's to do with injury prevention. It's to do with stability, which itself has to do with injury prevention and also overall strength. I've literally worked with people where we've taken the pad off and within 3 weeks I've doubled their squat. Why? Because when you take away lateral instability and you give somebody a solid platform to squat from, all of a sudden those legs aren't having to try and deal with all this left-right movement. They can control straight down and straight up. You actually control the movement better. Gloves will let things roll and slide, and I've actually watched somebody peel the skin, and I mean like sleeve their hand because of a glove from right there all the way down to here, bones and connective tissue exposed.
Oh.
Why? Because the stitching on a glove dug into a callus and peeled it down. I realize that I'm being super, super, super me about this, and I'm sorry, but I've just seen too many people get hurt to think, oh, it's just a cute little quirky thing and people like their gloves, or they like their little hand underpants glove things. Like, no. Ditch the pads, ditch the gloves. The only thing that you might ever need would be something like knee sleeves or wrist wraps or something, and those are themselves protective and they're not really involved in the lift.
And the hip thrust pad is okay. Denise asked that.
Do not.
So that's a different conversation. I do them without it, but I'm also a psychopath. So you just have to kind of understand that I don't mind pain. But yes, it's one of those things, especially as you increase the weight with hip stabilizing movements, you actually like rises. So like if you're thinking about like hip thrust or like single leg thrusts or something like that, you actually want some of that instability because you want to be able to force your hips to work in single and in double. So I'm not super worried about it. I would really rather use like a wrap towel than something as compressible as foam. But if you are comfortable and you've got like the really hard foam that they use specifically for hip, like for hip raises or glute blasters or whatever the crap they want to call that movement this year. I've seen it literally in 7 years. I think I've seen 5 different names for the exact same exercise. That's fine, but don't use it on a squat. Like just don't.
Dennis asks, blue cheese dressing, too much dairy?
Yes.
Yes.
It's dairy. It's a zero dairy thing, not just a little bit, or because everybody's measure of a little bit is totally different. Totally different.
Mhm.
No dairy.
Yeah, the only dairy, and I can touch on this really quick, the only dairy that's acceptable in the program is going to be ghee. And it's not just because we're being capricious and mean. Ghee has actually been clarified, and so almost all of the milk solids, which are mostly proteins that have a little bit of an inflammatory response, have been scraped away. And so what you're left with is almost nothing but milk fat. And so we're kind of okay with that. Not to mention it's been slightly denatured by the high heat cooking to clarify it. So we find that people who don't tolerate other dairy well can tolerate ghee without any big issues. So ergo, again, this is more of a pragmatic thing. It's the only reason we introduced it, that and the fact that avocado oil costs like the soul of your firstborn to get any decent amount of. So.
All right, I think that looks like that's it. Unless anybody sees anything we missed.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
Alrighty.
later.
Well,
All
Good
right,
deal.
it's about 7 o'clock, so we're good.
Perfect.
All right,
Same-
guys.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
Yep. Finish up
I'll
your
see
week.
you guys Saturday.
What? Oh yeah, Saturday.
That's right.
Saturday morning. Yeah. Well, in level 1 and 2A.
That's right.
Yeah, coffee with Chantel.
Yay.
All righty. Thanks.
Bye,
I
For
did like that you were actually drinking coffee too. Just so we're clear, like it wasn't just like a euphemistic name for a morning video. Literally, like there was coffee, but I was really hopeful that you'd have like the
Clear cup.
Lisa. You'll do this better than I will. But what's the coffee talk with from Saturday Night Live or the
That's
Mike
coffee.
Christmas, like
CAWFEE, coffee.
I'm
Waffy.
getting the
I feel like
clant.
it's CWA. No, it's CAW.
Well,
CWA.
I can't remember. It was Linda Richmond, I think was her name. So talk amongst yourselves. The Holy Roman Empire was neither holy nor Roman nor an empire. All right. We will see you guys next week.
See you guys next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.